as the parents, when the former parents, is so hard for me to get used to this. Now, uh, took my stuff, and then the person who I thought was my father was helping me get some of the stuff out from one bag to and put it into another bag. Nepal Intel, military Intel, they're bigger and stronger. I mean, visibly they look bigger, taller. I mean, well fed, well paid. So he was standing right there, and given that the person who I thought was my father comes from an old Kathmandu family, and I mean, I guess he was recognized. And I've had situation where people have asked me directly. I mean, that's the old timer do. Who's your grandfather? And they would instantly recognize me. I mean, apparently, the man's father was justice. I mean, not a big name Supreme Court justice, but Kathmandu Court justice. But still, he was well known around Kathmandu town. When population was very small, and his father, the man who I thought was my father's grandfather, was justice as well, apparently. So, I mean, I guess that was the reason, and then also now that I mean, they'd taken some of my luggage with them, so that made it for a difficult situation. So they had to allow me to leave, but then obviously, I mean, there was plan to stop me right there. So Mr. Andrew McCoss, although he had responded to my email saying, I mean, he had written actually interestingly, don't stay too long in sunny Britain, sarcastic way, sunny Britain, while giving that email address of Ashish Butt, apparently advisor to the first black minister of UK, Paul Boating, in Tony Blair government, and through whom, I mean, I got to go to Disley Park and had all the networks, including meeting Helena Kennedy, among others. Uh, so I was allowed to leave, but then what happened is in the plane, all Nepali, uh, we call in Nepal Gorkha, from the house of Gorkha, but imperial distortion being Gurkha, a Gurkha, and they've been diligent servant of the empire, and as I say, you know, whoever are in this, especially in the sex trade business, as I've come to experience, I call them Gurkha, seat eaters, and that should be the real term for them, actually. But anyway, this Gurkha came to sit with me, and I mean, I didn't find that strange. I mean, it was almost empty plane. But when we landed in Doha, as we were waiting for the transit, he came to sit with me again. And still, I was not aware. I mean, I was not sure what was happening. But then, when we called to board the plane, there had to be recheck in. I mean, because third world countries' passports are controlled twice. Going to first world. So he sprang out of the chair, rushed in front of me, and then handed it was a Nepali employee of Qatar Airways doing the check-in for Nepali people going to UK in Doha airport, handed him a letter pointing at me. And apparently, he had been given a letter from Nepal government in Kathmandu to turn me back from Doha. So I told, I was a Nepali, I think Brahmin boy, and then when as I've written, uh, you know, there's Gurkhas can be quite obtuse, sadist in a way. I mean, not always. I mean, some just generalization, but I mean that's what I've experienced. I mean, it has to do with the strata, the social strata that's been created, and then I mean, those who are on upper hierarchy in society tend to be, sometimes more reasonable than those who've been suppressed. I mean, it's not their fault. I mean, that's my observation. I mean, as I've written about it, I mean, while I was being sought to be sought in Kathmandu, it was the Gurkha man insisting to another, I think it was a Brahmin or Kshatriya suitor that had been arranged to suit me, and he was hesitating. So anyway, this Gurkha gave the letter, and then I was shocked. I was looking at him, and he fled. He had to serve his masters. He served his masters. I mean, it was well arranged with, obviously, Mr. Andrew Mukos, well aware of it. I mean, he played very professionally. You know, I mean, the meeting ended well. He responded to my email, but then he never replied when I wrote him once I got to UK. I mean, obviously, I'll talk about I was not nearly returned from Heathrow, and I was told to be returned. Obviously, I mean, there was some protest, obviously, among the immigration staff. I'll get to that later. But anyway, so I told this Nepali Brahmin boy attending the Doha counter of Qatar Airways, look, I'm a scholarship recipient from British government. I have a letter. This is my letter of scholarship. I have to go. I'm going for higher studies. But Nepal government has given us letters saying, you have to be returned. I mean, well, I mean, I can't go back. That means I can't go back even more. I mean, that means I face danger. I didn't tell him all that. I mean, I just told him, well, I have to go for this scholarship. I'm chosen by British government. But I mean, inside, I'm like, I've already been betrayed by British government. So um, that Nepali boy called his superior, an Arab Qatar man. He came, he looked at the letter, and he left. And apparently, he'd gone to, I guess, talk to his superior. And I guess they decided to override this Nepal government request over the fact that I had a British government, British Foreign and Commonwealth Office, British Council letter, achieving scholarship recipient. So I was allowed to board the plane and flew to London. But when I landed in Heathrow, right when I was walking in the ramp, going to immigration check, again, some tough guy type, I mean, civilian dress. They're in t-shirt, I mean, it's always incognito, trying to be very subtle and incognito, but I instantly recognized. I mean, I had started recognizing anyway. I mean, I had already become aware that I was being now, I mean, as I had told Mr. Andrew, because my life was never going to be, I mean, internally, I didn't tell him, silent when I was having finishing the meal with him, when he had identified me to Nepal Intel, and obviously, I mean, there was perhaps plan to get me right there. I mean, I just wiggled out from the conversation. I mean, definitely managed my conversation, I guess. So I recognized my picture was taken. I mean, it was a guy in t-shirt, I think, and jeans. I don't know. I mean, somebody had just taken my picture. I can't quite recall in detail what clothes, but so once I got into the immigration check, uh, this immigration lady was saying, I mean, was it your first? I mean, is it your first time coming to UK? I said yes. I mean, she said you have to go through the quarantine then. I mean, it's like, I mean, I thought that was, I mean, a bit insulting in a way, but I guess till that time there was, because of, I mean, I was explained later when I asked somebody, because the NHS is free, and then there has to be some control on health issue. So I mean, but it was like all formalities. I mean, I had my X-ray done, and I was just asked when my X-ray was done, and I was all cleared later on. But anyway, but she told me you have to go to the quarantine, and I was asking her where's the quarantine, and immediately somebody came, and somebody, I mean, obviously told the lady, the immigration check, to make me return, not allow me in. And she started arguing, but he has scholarship. And I was like, I was, I was just looking at them, shocked. I guess she protested that, and what a, I mean, illustrative of a duality, a rule of law, democracy, freedom, global order, global rule of law goes hand in hand with state gangsterism, criminality. And right there, I mean, I mean, scores of people were coming, and I was just admiring. They would just go, I mean, both to my left and right, and on the queue that I was in too. I mean, these two ladies were having a kind of a argument, and then the lady on the immigration check left. I guess it was my luck again. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because I mean, this particular lady was kind enough, considerate enough. See that she protested, but he's got a scholarship, and then perhaps it was unfathomable for her. I mean, I was to be returned to a place from where I had faced threats, and from the request of that place. I mean, just mind-boggling how I've been treated by this country, uh, the the progenitor of democracy and rule of law. So anyway, uh, on both my left and right, people would go. I guess they were declaring that they were going to apply for asylum or refugee. Immediately, they would be somebody would come to take them away, a counselor with coffee in hand, and they were like very catered to. And I was thinking, actually, I have more of a case to apply for asylum protection right away because I was sought to be gotten right there in Nepal airport. I was sought to be returned from Doha airport. Now I was being refused entry. I mean, I had not been refused. I mean, the ladies were arguing, and then, but I couldn't do that because it's part of Int'L plan, the real estate. I mean, I had already understood how deep it is. I mean, from my few interactions with Mr. Andrew McCoss, I mean, he appeared as I mean, really the hold, the power in the British Embassy, having with the political secretary, I mean, first secretary political appointment, you know, and politics controls everything, with all the networking and everything. And the ambassador is really a sinecure appointment anyway. I mean, most of the time. So, uh, I mean, charge d'affaires superior, but still, I mean, as an intel person, you would have more control. But I mean, he had real power, as much of a power as having Nepal intel, Nepal military intel, coming to I mean, I guess the idea was to finish me off because I mean, the drawing of curtain and having the Nepal intel sit behind me. Only that I went ahead and sat with him side by side, facing in the dining hall, so with my back to the window. So, so while these ladies were arguing, I mean, I mean, I kept staying, and then I guess both of them went to perhaps talk to their superior, and nobody came. An Indian person came to take over her desk. I asked him, I've been told to wait here. What is going on? Can you help me? No, I can't help you. That's the thing. You know, as I write about this, uh, the syndrome of being kind of, I mean, I'll put it what it is as what it is. I mean, the chosen servant of the master attitude. When you're taken into certain position in a situation like this, you try to prove your worth more by being like that. And nobody told me anything. I mean, I was like, I was getting a bit worried now. I mean, I don't worry anyway, but I was wondering what was going on. I was really being returned, and then all of a sudden, I mean, there were like few other people who had been told to go to quarantine, but they had not managed to find the place, so they were behind me as well. I guess because of this hold up like situation, the the line, there was a bit of a line created behind. So the Indian guy brusquely told me to step aside and started, servicing the people, attending to people behind me. And finally, a very big, tough, thug type green T-shirt. I still remember. Guy came and, hey, you go to quarantine. That's the way he talked to me. So I guess that's an Intel person. So probably there was some discussion, and perhaps it was found to be, you know, inconscionable that a person who's been chosen for British Council administered Foreign and Commonwealth Office scholarship to have been returned from the airport just like that. So he told me to go to quarantine, and I went, and there was a very kind African descent lady, and she said, she just asked me, I told her, I've been waiting, I've lost my transport to the University of Warwick. They told me to come outside by 9 a.m. That was the time I had given. It's already 10. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to get to the university. And she said, but you have to go through full health checkup and quarantine, whatnot. Extras. I've had all that done in Kathmandu. And she said, she looked at me for some time and she just let me go. Um, but anyway, when the very term quarantine was, human being in quarantine, well, it's an imperial experience I've had. So, uh, so I got out, and then there was University of Warwick sign. Some students from University of Warwick had come to pick me up. Pick all the students, incoming students for University of Warwick, as other universities were doing. And then I I got stressed out a bit, and I wanted to smoke, so I bought a cigarette. I went out to smoke, and I'd been shown some small uh, service door for for the airport people to go and go out and come in. It's not really a door for to walk into the airport and coming in, and just like a back door kind of thing. So I was told to go smoke there by this place where I bought the cigarette. It's a kiosk. So I was smoking. A guy came. There. 24/7 on all CCTV trained on me, obviously. So they were watching me where I was going. A guy came from another passageway to my left and started recording me. And that's the thing I've noticed. In Nepal too, just when I was flying here in August, when I was staying in a hotel, trying to evade capture by the criminals, the former family, uh, 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 he told me he was a British student, NGO worker working on some fisheries. But he came, held camera, just they would hold camera like this, and don't even pretend, just like this, taking directly, without doing anything. Just dismissive, even in Nepal. Only one time an American did, and that was, as I've written in Twitter thread, when some Chinese were trying to get creative with me in this place called uh, Garden of Dreams, as I've written, and then I was thought to be poisoned right there. When that American boy, this person, obviously directed to put something in my water, and then that night I had a difficult night. I was thought to be murdered. Obviously, people have died, succumbed to heart situation. Many people. But I'll get to that later. But that's the only time. That Americans tried to murder me and kill me on the street. That's aside. But it's a totally dismissive. It's again took from the left, and I knew what was going on, and I couldn't possibly react. I was just sought to be nearly returned from the airport. So uh, I just ignored, just like I had to, I talked about I've written about it in the Twitter. There was a tiny little blonde girl who had seen me first by October, by late September, by the amphitheater um, in the courtyard of Roots building, and then she'd come to talk to me outside the library in March 2005. September 2004, she'd seen me late, and I had ignored her because I knew I had to first assess what was going on. So I mean, uh, the guy, Mr. Andrew McCoss, had already sold me cold, as I've said in other videos. So in September 2000, March 2005, right outside the library, she tried to talk to me. Same thing again, just directly taking my picture, just like that. I mean, I guess it's quite internalized when you are, also as I've written in the Twitter, the totem pole of respectability by national identity. So the reason I was treated so dismissively, just like a non-human, basically non-being, because I was a Nepali national. They would not do that to Indian. Because they have to be careful. India is a big country now. They have a much more better relations with